companies really need to make sure that they've got routes for people to complain, because it's not about making life easier for you, it's about making life easier for the customer. Because if you're going to make it difficult for them to complain, they're not going to return, and you won't know that. Moment what consumers are telling me, amongst lots of other things, because really there's a list as long as you're on to the, in the moon and back, but they don't like chatbots. And you'll hear from companies a lot, oh, we like chatbots. Yeah, you like chatbots, but actually your consumers don't. It's making life easier for you, but not necessarily for consumers. They've got a long way to go. Chatbots have. They want to speak to a human more often than not. And quite often when they ask the questions, they're not getting the answers that they want. And then they're eventually having to go to speak to somebody. So you need a really sophisticated chatbot system, if you're going to have one, that actually will answer people's questions. And you don't know the questions that people are going to ask, because everybody's case is different. And so there has to be an option of being able to speak to a human. So people are very frustrated with chatbots, very, very much so. Whatever people say, I hear that a lot from consumers. If I put up, I regularly do, what frustrates you most about customer service? Chatbots are always, without fail, there. And another one that people always say to me, frequently, is not doing what you say you will do. Now, you think in your personal life, if somebody says they're going to come round and bring you a present and they don't, that's very disappointing, isn't it? If somebody says they're going to take your children out and you're going to get that break and they don't, it's very disappointing. And it's the same when it comes to complaints. It's just as frustrating. If somebody's phoned you up or written to you and said, I want this to happen, and you've said you'll do it, you'll follow up within 5 days, you'll follow up, and you don't. That makes people much more frustrated. And so they've got their complaint, and then they've got the complaint about the complaint process. So that's very, very frustrating for people that you're not doing that. And in a similar vein, it's when people don't take that ownership and they pass you from pillar to post. So you've got a customer who's already annoyed with you, and you try and pass the buck, and it goes to somebody else, and it goes to somebody else. Now, I work with consumers on how to get around that, but businesses shouldn't be doing it in the first place. They need to be training their staff much better to take ownership. What I think I sort of touched upon it there is that in your chatbots is to not just think it's questions that you want to think about. It's looking at it how consumers will look at it, how your customers will look at it, and actually testing that with customers, and not just putting the chatbot out there and hoping for the best. Constantly monitor that, and really see what people are putting in those boxes, not just the questions, making sure you've got an option for being able to speak to somebody, making sure that if somebody's done everything on a chatbot, that they get that correspondence, that dialogue emailed to them. Because quite often if people have got a chatbot, they've then not got a record. And that's another criticism that I would have on the chatbots, is that I always say to consumers, put your complaint in writing, because then you've got the evidence should you need to take the matter further. And when businesses try really hard to stop that so that people don't have evidence, I think it reflects extremely badly on the company. So you want to ensure that people are able to get hold of you in any way that they feel fit. So we're seeing companies sort of taking off email addresses, and they're saying, well, that's making our life, more streamlined. It's more effective. Yeah, but for whom? Because for some consumers, particularly me, and what I advise people is to always put your complaints in writing so you can take the matter further. Now, if you're going to only give people chat boxes and WhatsApp and phoning, people can't do that because the laws are different around recording phone calls and all of that, taking that to court or to ADR. So companies really need to make sure that they've got routes for people to complain, because it's not about making life easier for you, it's about making life easier for the customer. Because if you're going to make it difficult for them to complain, they're not going to return, and you won't know that. That's what businesses don't realize, that I think sometimes, because they see their returning customers and they think, okay, we've got 20% of customers returning, but they're not necessarily seeing why 80% aren't. And quite often it's because they've dealt with a complaint badly. Because if you deal with a complaint well and effectively, then those customers are going to go back, because they're going to think, well, even if there is a problem, that company dealt with my complaint really well, I will go with them. It's really important, I think, to be able to ensure that you're helping people to complain. Have a page on your website that says how to complain, something along the lines of, we really hope nothing goes wrong with your purchase, those kinds of things. But if it does, this is what we would like you to do. Because I know, working with consumers and businesses, that sometimes for businesses it's very difficult for them to deal with a complaint from a consumer, because they haven't given the reference number, they haven't given the order number, they haven't said what's actually wrong, they haven't said what they would like. Is it a partial refund? Is it a replacement? Is it what they want? Aside from what their legal rights are. So if a company actually says, give us this information, they do what to do to complain. You're making it easier for the customer to complain, but then you're going to be able to deal with it much easier because you've got all that information that you need. So it might seem contradictory, but actually making it easier for somebody to complain will mean that you are more effective and efficient in dealing with that complaint, which means you save money because you're spending less time, and your customer is likely to return because you've dealt with that complaint really well. The latest Institute for Customer Service, their research that came out recently, showed that 31% of consumers would pay more for good customer service. So that just goes to show you that, and that's increasing. So that just goes to show you how important customer service is, that people really value it more and more, even in a cost of living crisis. So hopefully, as we come out of that, we'll see that actually people really want better customer service. So to completely always be fobbing people off because you think it's better for you because you're going to save money, in the long term you just aren't. And that's what I think businesses really need to get their head around. And smaller businesses, I think, quite often do that better than big businesses, because they've got that personal touch. So yeah, it's about really getting that feedback from customers, and actually being prepared to develop your service to give customers what they want, and not be afraid of complaints. Not go, oh, here's another complaint, to actually welcome them. I'm a bit of an anti the phrase, oh, we welcome complaints. Nobody welcomes complaints. Let's be realistic. Nobody welcomes complaints. But you do need them, because it's free consultancy. If you brought in consultants to deal with your to deal with any part of your process of any of your business, it would cost you a fortune, but you're getting that free feedback. So also I think it's about getting that information from consumers and rewarding them for that. If they're giving you feedback that you then change something, then you need to at the very least say thank you. Yeah, I think I sort of touched on it earlier, that if you get things right and you are open to those complaints, and they're not just saying, and not just dealing with that complaint there and then with that person, but actually putting that broadly across your whole business. But if you are sort of helping with that individual, if you are giving them good service and you are treating them as an individual, like the previous story that I told, that those people will talk about you. They will do that heavy lifting of marketing for you. So they are, from the research, you're seeing that people are wanting to pay for that better customer service, but also they'll talk about it. There's that old adage, if you have a good service, if you have bad service, one person, you'll tell 10 people. But actually that's probably infinitely more now, because we've got social media, and that's an age-old adage. So you're probably, if you've got a bad experience, you're going to put that on social media and tell loads of people. Now, fewer people will talk about a good experience, let's face it. You only have to look on review sites, and occasionally you will see people are more keen to talk about a bad experience than a good experience. But if they're going to talk about a bad experience, you want them to at least be able to say, but they dealt with the matter really well, so that if they do a review, you're able to respond to that review as well. But simply ask people. It always amazes me when I talk to businesses, particularly small businesses. Like, I wish we could get more reviews. Wish we could get them. Do you ever ask them? Do you ever ask people to do a review? No. There you go. How simple is that? Ask. They can only say no. So it is a case about asking people for reviews. And that's going to do some of the marketing for you. Certainly dealing with the complaints really well. That will, because people will talk about that on social media. And even if when people complain about a company, somebody will pop in and say, oh, well, I did X, Y, and Z, and this is how it worked for me. Those kinds of things are great free advertising for you. It should be part of your marketing. And I think if you treat people as individuals, and you're aware of people that could be vulnerable, you don't instantly think, well, that email was really rude. Well, you don't know their circumstances. If somebody has just been widowed, or if somebody's disabled. I think if you go with an approach to every complaint that you receive as you don't know the background, and could it be this, could it be that, could it be the other, your perspective on handling that complaint, and that the person who's making the complaint, will be slightly different, changed, and you may change the way that you respond to that complaint. And if you train the staff to handle those complaints.